The sky above Kether Prime did not burn all at once. It dimmed first, as if the stars themselves had decided to look away. Civilian traffic stalled in high orbit, frozen by jamming fields that hummed like distant thunder. Then the Virex fleet arrived, layered, geometric, impossibly calm, sliding from folded space with the confidence of something that had never been stopped. On the surface, the Ketheri watched from balconies and public spires, their four-limbed silhouettes motionless. They had known this moment would come. The ultimatum had been delivered 3 cycles earlier, sealed in ritual language and false courtesy. Accept protection. Surrender autonomy. Provide tribute. The Ketheri Council had answered with a single word. No. A Virex emissary appeared in the sky, projected large enough to cast a shadow over the Capitol Plaza. Its voice carried without amplification, smooth and measured. By refusal, you declare hostility. By hostility, you invite correction. There was no panic. Only silence, and then the first strike, precise, surgical, devastating. A power nexus vanished in a column of white light. The city did not scream. It endured. Light years away, in a chamber carved from obsidian and gold, the Galactic Concord observed and recorded. Intervention was discussed, categorized, delayed. The Virex Dominion was acting within its interpretation of law. No formal objection was raised. Admiral Elias Rowan watched the feeds alone. He did not clench his fists. He did not speak. His eyes moved from the present destruction to an archival marker hovering at the edge of his display. A date. A vote. A margin of 1. Centuries earlier, humanity had stood in that same chamber, smaller, weaker, unfamiliar. Earth's atmosphere still carried scars from internal wars. Their colonies were fragile things, clinging to marginal stars. The Concord had not debated whether humans were dangerous. It had debated whether they were worth the risk of survival. The proposal had been clinical. Preemptive sterilization. Cultural preservation permitted. Biological continuation denied. It was framed as mercy. Votes were cast in ritual order. One by one, approval lights filled the chamber. Humanity's delegation stood rigid, already understanding the outcome. Then the Ketheri ambassador rose. They were not powerful then. Not influential. Their voice carried no threat. I object, the ambassador said. The chamber stirred. Objections were permitted, rarely useful. On what grounds? The presiding arbiter asked. On precedent, the Ketheri replied. On uncertainty. On the belief that a species judged by its worst history denies the possibility of its best future. The vote was recorded. The measure failed by 1. Humanity survived. The cost of that descent unfolded slowly. Trade corridors narrowed. Cooperative accords expired without renewal. Invitations stopped arriving. The Ketheri Union did not fall, it was quietly pushed aside, cycle by cycle, until it stood alone, respected in theory, unsupported in practice. Now the Virex had noticed. Rowan closed the archive and turned to the present. Reports scrolled past in discipline columns. Ketheri defense arrays failing. Civilian evacuation incomplete. Virex forces advancing exactly as predicted. A door slid open behind him. The council is convening, said Director Hale, her voice low. They want your assessment. Rowan nodded and followed, his steps measured. The Terran Council chamber was smaller than the Concord's, built for efficiency rather than ceremony. Faces turned as he entered, politicians, economists, admirals. Fear was present, but controlled. The Virex action is regrettable, the chair began. But not illegal. By whose definition? Rowan asked. By theirs, the chair replied. And by ours, if we're honest. A projection flared to life, outlining risk models. Economic retaliation. Diplomatic isolation. Open conflict probabilities. We are not obligated, Hale said carefully. There is no treaty. Rowan met her gaze. There is a record. Silence followed. Some shifted uncomfortably. Others avoided his eyes. You're referring to an event before any of us were born, the chair said. That does not bind us. Rowan's voice remained even. It binds us if we choose to remember. An aide cleared their throat. Admiral, with respect, intervention would escalate beyond containment. The Virex will respond. Yes, Rowan said. They will. The chair leaned forward. Is this about strategy, or sentiment? Rowan paused. When he spoke again, the room felt smaller. It is about doctrine. He keyed a command. An ancient file appeared, unmarked, dormant. The title alone drew murmurs. Reciprocal Obligation Doctrine. This was ratified in the first decade after first contact, Rowan said. It was designed for a situation we hoped would never occur. Hale frowned. It authorizes total commitment, Rowan finished. Not proportional response. Fulfillment. The chair exhaled slowly. And the trigger? Rowan's eyes did not leave the display. A verified act of existential mercy toward humanity. Singular or collective? Another silence. This one stretched. Finally, the chair spoke. If we proceed, there is no partial withdrawal. I know, Rowan said. And if the galaxy turns on us? Rowan thought of the archive. Of a lone figure standing when silence would have been safer. Then we will face that, he said. With our debt paid. Authorization codes chimed through the chamber, one after another. Some were hesitant. None were refused. Rowan returned to his command deck. The stars beyond the viewport looked unchanged, indifferent. He activated a secure channel, encrypted beyond Concord reach. Fleet Lazarus, he said quietly. Wake. Across dormant systems scattered through forgotten space, ancient human constructs stirred. Not ships of conquest, but instruments of promise, waiting centuries for a single word. Rowan opened another channel, this one narrow and fragile, reaching toward Kether Prime. Hold, he transmitted. The debt is being collected. Overlord Zyrith Viekol observed the unfolding campaign from the sanctum deck of his flagship, limbs folded in ceremonial composure. Ketheri resistance was collapsing exactly on schedule. Their orbital platforms had failed within acceptable margins, their evacuation corridors severed with minimal expenditure. The Dominion's analysts projected total compliance, or extinction, within 12 standard hours. Transmit the final compliance offer, Zyrith ordered. An aide hesitated. Executor, new variables have emerged. Zyrith's mandibles clicked once. Nothing emerges without permission. The display shifted. Peripheral systems along the Ketheri border were going dark, not exploding, not burning, simply vanishing from the Dominion sensor lattice. No hyperspace wakes. No energy signatures. Just absence. Anomaly? Zyrith asked. Negative, the aide replied. Multiple anomalies. Simultaneous. Zyrith leaned forward. Origin? Unclear. No fleet detected. That drew Zyrith's full attention. Nothing acts without presence. At the edge of Ketheri space, a Virex command node lost contact with its escorts. Its crew reported a pressure distortion, localized and precise, as if gravity itself had been folded inward and removed. The node did not explode. It ceased to exist. Across Dominion space, similar reports followed. Communication relays failed. Navigation grids misaligned. Fleets found themselves intact but blind, weapons charged and useless. Then a signal cut through the chaos, clean, unmistakably human. This is Admiral Elias Rowan of the Terran Unified Defense, the voice said. Calm. Unhurried. To all Virex command authorities, disengage immediately. Zyrith rose, fury sharpening his movements. They dare speak as equals? The aide's voice trembled. Executor, they are not advancing. They are already positioned. Rowan stood on the bridge of a vessel no Dominion sensor could resolve. Around him, Fleet Lazarus unfolded its purpose without spectacle. These were not ships built for presence. They were architectures of denial, mass shadow arrays, localized spacetime anchors, systems designed to rewrite the rules of engagement before the first shot. A junior officer glanced at Rowan. Virex fleets attempting to power primary weapons. Allow it, Rowan said. The attempt failed. Energy bled harmlessly into null fields, siphoned away and stored, not destroyed. The message was unmistakable. On Xyretha's flagship, alarms escalated beyond ritual thresholds. Explain, Xyreth demanded. The aide swallowed. Human assets predate current detection standards. They were seeded before the Dominion's expansion. Impossible, Xyreth hissed. No species plans war centuries in advance for a minor ally. Rowan opened a direct channel to Xyreth. The visual resolved slowly, deliberately. You misunderstand, Rowan said. This is not war. Xyretha's eyes narrowed. Then name it. Fulfillment. You risk annihilation, Xyreth warned. The Dominion spans. Spanned, Rowan corrected. Your reach was never as complete as you believed. Xyreth laughed, sharp and disbelieving. You would dismantle an empire over a procedural vote? Rowan's gaze did not waver. Over a choice. As if on cue, Virex assault formations around Kether Prime froze. Their drives locked, command hierarchies severed with surgical elegance. Human vessels emerged only then, sleek, restrained, bearing no insignia beyond a simple Terran mark. Human evacuation craft slipped through corridors the Virex could no longer close. Medical teams followed. Reconstruction units deployed with rehearsed efficiency. A Ketheri coordinator stared at the incoming aide in stunned silence. You planned this, they said over an open channel. Before we asked. Rowan replied softly, before you needed to. In the Galactic Concord chamber, observers argued in rising panic. Systems reported Dominion losses without corresponding human aggression. No occupied worlds. No annexations. Just removal. They are not conquering, one delegate whispered. They are correcting. Rowan transmitted to the Concord next, his tone unchanged. Interference at this stage will be interpreted as assumption of outstanding balance, he said. We advise restraint. The threat lay not in his words, but in their restraint. Xyreth attempted one final maneuver. A doomsday protocol, ancient and absolute, targeted at Kether Prime star. The command signal never reached its destination. The star's output stabilized under human containment fields, its fury held in check by technologies the Dominion had never conceived. Xyreth stared at the data, comprehension dawning too late. You prepared this, he said slowly. Not as retaliation. As obligation. Yes, Rowan answered. What do you gain? Rowan considered the question. Completion. The channel closed. Across the galaxy, a realization spread faster than fear. Humanity had not intervened out of rage, ambition, or survival. They had acted because someone once stood when it was dangerous to do so. As Fleet Lazarus tightened its silent grip on the Dominion's remaining power structures, Rowan issued a final broadcast. The debt is half paid, he said. Any who wish to inherit the remainder may declare now. No one did. The stars remained silent, not because they were at peace, but because they had learned what remembering could cost. The galaxy did not erupt into chaos. It froze. Trade lanes emptied. Defense fleets powered down and held position, afraid that movement itself might be interpreted as intent. In the Concord archives, analysts abandoned prediction models altogether. Nothing in their history accounted for an intervention that dismantled power without claiming it. Empires fell because something stronger replaced them. This was different. The Virex Dominion was not being conquered. It was being carefully, methodically removed, as if it had never been essential to begin with. Overlord Xyrath watched his dominion unravel from a chamber grown suddenly too quiet. Systems still responded, but only locally, isolated fragments cut from the whole. Advisors whispered of surrender, of appeal, of precedent. Xyrath dismissed them all. He had ruled long enough to recognize the shape of defeat. It was not loud. It was inevitable. Open a channel to the human admiral, Xyrath ordered. The connection formed without delay. Admiral Rowan appeared, standing exactly as before, hands folded behind his back, expression unreadable. "You have crippled my fleets," Xyrath said. "You have humiliated my authority. What remains of your objective?" Rowan answered evenly. "Completion." Xyrath's mandibles tightened. "You speak of morality, yet you have destabilized an entire region. Billions depend on the structures you are tearing apart." "They depended on fear," Rowan replied. "That dependency was the instability." Xyrath leaned closer to the projection. "Then hear this. I will deny you your ending." He triggered the final protocol. At the heart of the Dominion, the Virex capital star flared violently, its output spiking beyond containment thresholds. The order was simple: if the Empire could not endure, it would leave nothing behind to inherit. A warning, written in stellar fire. The star did not explode. Human containment fields engaged instantly, forming a lattice of impossible geometry around the swelling plasma. The flare folded inward, energy redirected and bound, the star's fury reduced to a controlled pulse. The capital world survived, bathed in an unnatural calm. Xyrath stared, comprehension hollowing his triumph. "You anticipated this." "Yes," Rowan said. "You have always preferred absolutes." The chamber shook as Dominion command structures dissolved. Automated systems shut down with quiet finality. No alarms. No panic. Just silence spreading through an empire that had forgotten how to exist without being feared. On Kether Prime, the sky brightened for the first time since the invasion began. Human engineers stabilized grids, restored water systems, reopened transit corridors. Ketheri civilians emerged cautiously, disbelief etched into their movements. A Ketheri elder approached a human officer overseeing reconstruction. "Why us?" the elder asked. The officer paused, then answered simply. "Because you chose once." Rowan observed the restoration from orbit. When reports confirmed the Dominion's dissolution was irreversible, he issued the final directive. Human fleets disengaged, containment fields withdrawn in precise sequence. No occupation forces remained. No banners were raised. In the Concord chamber, delegates argued in subdued tones. New doctrines were drafted on the fly. Protection pacts were re-evaluated. A single clause appeared in every revision, unspoken but understood: a species defended by humanity was untouchable. Rowan declined all invitations to address the council. Instead, he traveled alone to a memorial site on Kether Prime. Names were etched into crystal pillars, those lost to sanctions, isolation, and quiet neglect over centuries. Rowan stood before them in silence. There was no ceremony. None was needed. A Ketheri representative joined him, voice soft. "The galaxy will fear you now." Rowan considered the statement. "Fear is temporary," he said. "Memory lasts longer." As he departed, the stars resumed their distant indifference. Trade would recover. New powers would rise. The galaxy would continue, altered but intact. What it would never forget was this: humanity had not intervened to rule, to punish, or to warn. They had acted because a debt existed, and because they possessed the means to honor it fully. Empires could prepare for invasion. They could not prepare for gratitude backed by resolve. The galaxy did not celebrate the fall of the Virex Dominion. Celebration required victory, and victory implied struggle. What had occurred defied both. Power had been removed without spectacle, authority dissolved without a successor. Where the Dominion's sigils once marked borders, there was now only empty designation space and unanswered questions. Admiral Elias Rowan returned to Terran space without escort. Fleet Lazarus dispersed into its dormant trajectories, slipping beyond detection, returning to the patient quiet from which it had waited for centuries. The Terran Council convened an emergency session, not to decide what to do next, but to understand what had already been done. "You've changed the balance permanently," the chair said, studying the aftermath reports. "The Concord is rewriting its charters." Rowan stood at ease. "They were overdue." "You made enemies," another counselor added. "Species that never wronged us now fear what we might remember." Rowan did not deny it. Fear is not hostility. It is caution. Hale watched him closely. "And if that caution turns into preemptive action?" "Then they will reveal their intent," Rowan replied. "And we will respond accordingly." There was no triumph in his voice. No pride. Only certainty. Across former Dominion space, systems began governing themselves for the first time in generations. Some fractured immediately, power vacuums filling with local conflicts. Others stabilized, forming councils, federations, alliances once forbidden. Humanity did not intervene. Aid was offered only when requested, and even then, it arrived without conditions. This restraint unsettled observers more than the intervention had. On Kether Prime, reconstruction continued at a measured pace. The Ketheri refused accelerated timelines, insisting on involvement at every level. Human engineers complied without complaint. Partnership, not stewardship. A Ketheri child approached a human medic one afternoon, eyes wide with curiosity. "Are you staying forever?" The medic smiled gently. "No. This is your home." "Then why did you come?" The medic considered the question. "Because someone once helped us when it mattered." The child nodded, satisfied, and ran off. Rowan received reports daily, but he read them less closely now. The critical phase had passed. What remained was adjustment. He spent more time in observation decks, watching stars drift past in slow arcs, thinking of the vote that had started everything. A single moment, nearly forgotten, now etched into galactic history. A secure channel opened unexpectedly. "Admiral Rowan," came the voice of a Concord envoy. "We request dialogue." Rowan accepted. The envoy's image flickered into view, composed but strained. "The Concord seeks assurance. Your doctrine, this reciprocal obligation, does it apply universally?" Rowan answered without hesitation. "No." "Then define its limits." "It applies only to actions taken when silence would have been safer," Rowan said. "To choices made without expectation of reward." The envoy hesitated. "That is, difficult to quantify." "Yes," Rowan agreed. "That is the point." The channel closed. Weeks later, Rowan returned to Earth. He walked through the Terran Memorial Hall alone, passing displays of humanity's earliest interstellar years, fragile ships, uncertain treaties, images of delegates standing beneath alien ceilings. He stopped before a modest plaque bearing a single line. "Survived by one vote." Rowan rested a hand against the cool surface. He did not bow. He did not salute. He stood quietly, letting the weight of continuity settle. Outside, life moved on. Markets reopened. Children attended school. News cycles shifted to lesser concerns. The galaxy sphere receded into something quieter and more enduring, awareness. Humanity had not declared itself guardian or judge. It had demonstrated something far more unsettling. Memory, paired with patience, and power held in reserve. A junior officer approached Rowan as he exited the hall. "Sir, long-range monitoring reports increased fleet construction among several polities." Rowan nodded. "Expected." "They're preparing." "Yes." "For us?" "For themselves," Rowan corrected. "Preparation is not aggression." The officer hesitated. "And if they test us?" Rowan looked up at the sky, blue and unremarkable. "Then they will learn whether they have earned our attention." That night, as Earth turned slowly beneath its stars, signals passed quietly through space, diplomatic overtures, cautious inquiries, subtle recalibrations of old assumptions. No one challenged humanity directly. No one spoke openly of the Virex anymore. Their absence had become a warning more effective than their presence ever was. In distant systems, historians began to teach a new lesson. Not about human weapons, or fleets, or strategy. About choice. About the enduring consequences of a single act performed without leverage. And somewhere beyond charts and borders, Fleet Lazarus slept again, its purpose fulfilled, its silence complete. The galaxy had learned to fear human power. It would take much longer to understand human restraint, and longer still to grasp the cost of earning it.